and well met, all my fellow adventurers. Thank you for joining me here today for our next discussion. And as you could probably guess from the title, it's to go over the idea of heading off to any more shards for 7.0. I've done a few prediction videos in the past discussing the shards, but I've never really talked about the idea of heading off to the other shards specifically. Now, as we know, and if you don't know, then you might want to pause this video before I spoil anything, though it makes me wonder why you would be watching this if you didn't already know. But otherwise, in the world of 14, Aetheris was sundered roughly 10,000 years before the current storyline, leaving behind the source and 13 reflections of itself. Just think of them as parallel universes of the same world or something. Anyway, in the beginning, all the worlds started off as perfect mirror images of each other, so they were all identical, at least in the beginning. But over the many years, different wars were fought, different natural disasters happened, as well as the rise and fall of many civilizations, caused each of these worlds to become much more unique and original. So while at the core, the world may still be the same, but the worlds have truly grown to become unique and different from each other. At least that's how I like to imagine it. The Ascians work to destroy these reflections and have them rejoin the source through a process known as the rejoining, and remake Aetheris the way it used to be. Though with both the Ascians and Zodiark now gone, it doesn't really seem likely that any more of these worlds will be in danger of rejoining, though that leads one to wonder, what's going to happen to them now? Well, best case scenario, I think, is that the worlds are going to continue to grow and prosper without any more interference from the Ascians. I mean, they're still human though, so it's kind of rough to say at that point. Now we, as the Warrior of Lights, we are originally from the Source world, where the other shards originally came from as well. We know that there are other worlds, and we've even visited a couple. But as of right now, out of the 13 reflections, 7 of them have already rejoined, so while we'll never be able to visit those, 5 are still around. And 1 has kind of been lost. It's kind of hard to say if it can still be saved at this point. Might be a bit too early to judge if anything can be done about that. Well, either way, I'm going to go over what we do know of each of the shards and then sum up what I personally think of ever visiting them in the future. First off is, of course, the first shard, which we've already visited thanks to the Shadowbringers expansion. The Ascians attempted to destroy it by flooding it with light until Minfilia was able to hold it back. This managed to buy the shard time until the Warrior of Light and the other Scions arrived. Thanks to them, they were able to find a way to save what was left of this world and are now beginning to restore it thanks to the Eden questline. So the first is well on its way to recovering from the damage done to it, and we can still visit it whenever we want to. Sadly though, this cannot be said for the fates of the second and third shards, both of whom have already been rejoined to the source. Now the second shard was specifically destroyed through fire aspected ether, meaning that when this shard was rejoined to the source, it specifically caused the third umbral calamity, which is where the sun had become enlarged and caused massive wildfires and drought during this time. As for the third shard, it was also rejoined, though it was destroyed through earth aspected ether, which ended up causing the fourth umbral calamity, which not only caused a massive earthquake, but ended up destroying the Alagon Empire. You really want to know how bad that earthquake was? It was apparently large enough to actually bury the entirety of the Crystal Tower pretty much to the tip of the spire. Now, it wasn't until the 7th calamity that it re-emerged thanks to the damage from Dalamud and Bahamut, but either way, both of these shards are forever lost, so sadly we won't ever be able to visit them. But for a little bit of good news, we still have the 4th shard, which managed to hang in there all this time. We sadly don't know anything else about it for the time being, however, though if I had to guess, I would say that it must have gone through its own share of problems through past Ascian involvement. You know, it's almost ironic that we know more about the lost shards at this point than the ones that are still around, at least at this point in time. As for the 5th shard, sadly that one has also been lost through another rejoining. The 5th is unique though in that it was actually the first shard that was rejoined. This one through wind aspected ether, which caused massive windstorms and tempests, which seemed to have been enough to destroy an entire floating continent on the source during the beginning of modern history. The 6th shard is also gone, but this one was lost through ice aspected ether, which brought about the 5th calamity, which literally froze parts of the world, reducing the source to an ice age for several years. The 7th shard is also gone as well, and when this one rejoined, this was what caused the most recent calamity with the 7th. That was when Dalamud fell and Bahamut managed to destroy most of Eorzea. So it seems that the damage that Bahamut's rained down upon Eorzea was amplified due to the rejoining. But moving on to a little bit of good news is that we still have both the 8th and the 9th shards, both of which are confirmed to still be there. So like with the 4th, they are possible places that we can visit in the future, though we know literally nothing else about them right now. On to the 10th shard though, sadly that one is also gone. This shard ended up falling to an overflow of water aspected ether, which caused a massive flood on the source and destroyed several cities in the process, such as Mach, Amdapur, and Nim. The 11th is another shard that is confirmed for us to still be there, so that is also another possible location to head to in the future. Alas, the same can't be said for the 12th, which was lost through lightning aspected ether, which ended up causing the 2nd calamity on the source, which rained down lightning bolts for a year. I can imagine that one must have been particularly devastating. And finally, the 13th shard, which we're still learning about thanks to the 6.x series. But this is a world that, despite what Y'shtola insists, this world is considered quote-unquote lost, because it's been reduced to an empty void. This was the result of the Ascians who tried to force a rejoining for the first time, but ended up getting carried away, and the result was that it was flooded with darkness and became the void. Now the odds of being able to save this world are slim, especially since the inhabitants have become void sent. Personally, I think it probably would be better to just go ahead and wipe it all out and just start over anew. Not sure if they can pull that off. But originally, when we first entered into the void for our little mission to track down Eshdiah, I was all for an expansion of us trying to save the void. But I can't help but feel that we would be biting off more than we can chew on that front. It would be hard to be able to visit the void for prolonged periods of time unless we can find a way to restore it in bits and pieces. I feel that we will be learning more about the fate of the 13th by the end of these patches, and especially before we head to the next expansion. As for the other shards, I also think it might be difficult to predict if we'll be able to go there as well. Now the reason that when we visited the first, that ended up working out so well for us was because there was just the continent of Norvront left, and we were able to focus the story and all of our attention on that one continent. But I doubt that the other shards are going to be in similar states to that. It's possible that they might be messed up through all manner of problems that the Ascians may have left behind, but I find it unlikely that we'll be able to explore all those shards when we still haven't seen all of the source yet. It would be one thing if we've already explored every inch of the source and then we move on to the shards afterwards, but with us jumping around so much over the last couple of expansions, I would really be surprised if we were heading off to another shard right away. I personally feel that we should be focusing our attention on the source for the time being, such as with Mericidia, which is by far the most popular prediction to where we'll be heading to next, though the rest of Ishabard and the New World are also on the list. I just feel that maybe for this expansion we try to stick to our world for right now and then maybe go off to another shard for 8.0, and maybe just switch back and forth between expansions. We do know that the storyline for the next saga has already been decided upon, and so we're looking at another 10 years before we see the end of this one, which will give us about 5 expansions at the very least. So I could see us having one expansion for Mericidia and at least one for the New World, though I do think that the New World is large enough for at least 2 expansions. And if we don't include the rest of Ishabard, which personally I feel would be pretty cool to have another expansion for that area at least, we would have at most 3 expansions where we'll be focusing on exploring the other shards. So since it's confirmed that the 4th, 8th, 9th, and 11th shards are still around, and assuming how well things end with the Void in the 6.x series, that would give us maybe 4 to 5 expansions at most for their explorations alone. And that's just assuming that we're going to be sticking to one continent per expansion for the other shards anyway. So we certainly have a lot of ground to cover, and don't get me started on the idea of time travel and maybe exploring the other cosmos and other planets someday, which are certainly possibilities for the future as well. And to think that when we first started off on our journey, we thought that the 3 city-states alone were huge. Well, I guess the good news for us is that Square Enix doesn't need to worry about running out of ideas on where to go next. We do kind of already have a bucket list of what we're going to see thanks to MXLK. We already have explored the ruins beneath the waters of the Bounty to start off with, which leaves us with the treasure islands of Blind Frost, the golden cities of the New World, the forgotten ruins of the South Sea Isles, and of course Mericidia, which he even asked if we knew anything about the present state of affairs. And he even encouraged us to continue to expand our horizons and that many civilizations in the other shards would surprise us, meaning that he has no doubt that we would get to other shards one day. Needless to say, I do think that we have truly cracked open a new Pandora's box, and we're about to go off on another wild adventure that will make the last one we've been on so far look like a walk through the park. For right now, though, we should be looking forward to the rest of the 6.x series and see what has become of the Void, and if it's possible that it could be saved. Though I have my own share of ideas to how that story will end. And I think that's it for now. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope that you are looking forward to the next prediction video, which will be discussing more about the possibility of a time skip between now and the upcoming expansion, and possibly how that would look. Let me know what you think about the ideas you have going on for the other shards, or even what you personally think would be waiting for us there. If you have an idea or suggestion to what you would like to see next, please drop a comment down below, and please subscribe to get more videos like this. But until next time, everyone, may you walk in the light of the crystal.